Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legionaries of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarCrest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 130, and we are covering Christus Dominus 19 through 21 on bishops being named by the Pope and the idea that they resign when they're sick. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more information at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. This is continuing chapter 2, bishops and their particular churches or dioceses. We're going to finish section 2.1 today on diocesan bishops. And so yesterday we talked about bishops need to encourage lay apostolate in various forms and need to serve those in unusual circumstances, migrant workers, cruise ship people, traveling circus, etc., things like that. Today, we're going to talk about bishops needing to be free from civil authorities in their naming and in their activity, and they should resign when they are too old or too sick. I just look at my notes. Sorry, I was laughing. I accidentally wrote they should resign when they are too old or too sick. I forgot the G there for resign. Sorry, I thought that was funny, but it's just resign because I missed a letter. Anyways, so we're going to do paragraphs 19 to 21. Paragraph 19 has two parts. A is saying the civil authorities can't interrupt the bishop's communication or interfere with him. And then also the bishop should care for the whole person. They're faithful, even in politics, and even things that are not like religious per se, but are important for the well-being of the flock. So let's read it. Well, let's read A, sorry. A, in discharging their apostolic office, which concerns the salvation of souls, bishops per se enjoy full and perfect freedom and independence from any civil authority. Hence, the exercise of their ecclesiastical office may not be hindered directly or indirectly, nor may they be forbidden to communicate freely with the apostolic see or ecclesiastical authorities or their subjects. Right? So this is this whole idea, right? We need to be free from civil authority as bishops. They can't, the church is either beside the state, independent, or it's above the state. It's not, we are renounce any kind of like alternate crown union or any kind of like state church and things like that, right? It's not either the kind of Byzantine model where it's alternate crown or the British model where it's like under the state. No, we are saying here that we are independent of the state, or or if the state wants to be, they can be subject to the church, right? And for example, I remember I was talking to a priest once. Not sure if he's passed away. He was an older priest at the time, and he mentioned that he was also chaplain to, I think like the National Guard of some form. And when the Clinton administration they wanted to ask all priests to read a certain message at Mass on a certain day, on the Sunday, and he fought it, and he was the test case that went all the way, that went through the courts and things like that. And that's the kind of thing where we need to have freedom from civil authorities, what this number is referring to, right? And there's freedom to act without civil interference, right? And that's the idea of also free communication as part of this, free communication to their flock and to the authorities, like also to their patriarch if they're Eastern Rite, in the U.S. to the USCCB, to the Vatican, things like that. There shouldn't be interference, or to their flock, to their subjects. It says here. So let's continue. 19b. Assuredly, while sacred pastors devote themselves to the spiritual care of their flock, they also in fact have regard for their social and civil progress and prosperity. According to the nature of their office, and as behooves bishops, they collaborate actively with public authorities for this purpose, and advocate obedience to just laws and reverence for legitimately constituted authorities. So that's two sentences. Let's take it in reverse order, right? That last one, collaborate with the public authorities. We can still collaborate with public authorities. We should advocate obedience to just laws. There's, for example, even if the law could be just either way, right? So, for example, is the use of small amounts of marijuana sinful? Probably not. But in a state where it is illegal, that's within the civil authorities' power to regulate dangerous chemicals. And so then it's, venially sinful breaking the law, right? Unless the law directly requires you to do something sinful, it's, disobedience is usually venially sinful, even in a small thing, right? And so we should follow the laws. We're not just like, hey, whatever. We don't ignore it, right? But then also, what do they look for? They look for the spiritual care, but also the prosperity, social, civil progress, things like that, right? And there is a pretty wide spectrum of what the church allows as far as like economic policy. The church's teaching on economic policy is more like fences around a huge area of options rather than a specific policy. And I think that there's important not to like the bishops not to waste their voice on, should we have a 21 or 22% tax rate for this income bracket or something, right? That's not a, both those are within the realm of reasonable. In almost every case I can think of there, right? And it's important to speak up on laws that might turn certain people almost into serfs or slaves or something like that, because we care for the whole person, not just that, right? So now 20, paragraph 20 is really about the idea of the bishops and the church having freedom from civil authority in the naming of bishops, right? So the Pope can name bishops, the conclave can elect a pope, and things like that, right? So this is going to have two subparagraphs, but both of them are on this. It's important here to think of the history, because historically, civil authorities had various concordants with some control over bishops, right? Often they'd then put second sons of kings or nobles there, because obviously most parts of Europe had primogeniture at this time. Primogeniture just means the oldest son inherits the whole farm, the whole, especially important for nobles, they inherit the whole area, or he becomes the king, things like that. Even today, primogeniture still like King Charles is king, because he was the oldest son of Queen Elizabeth. It's very good because Prince Andrew is not king, his brother. That would be very bad. I'm not a huge fan of Charles, but Charles is better than Andrew. Anyway, so things like that, right? And so Trent moved away from this because a lot of times these kind of family ones would just hang out at court with their family and wouldn't really serve the church. They actually made it so that they have to actually go to the diocese, actually have to do things there, not just kind of hang out and work off the income that has, right? And the different ways it had it was different. Like sometimes the local king could propose a few people, and the bishop of Rome would pick from those, or sometimes Rome would pick somebody and then they had a veto power, or they could Rome could pick somebody, but they could say no to 2 or 3 names that might be possible, right? Or things like that, right? And things like that. And some, I think it was the Holy Roman Empire, even had veto over the Pope. This was removed with Pius X before Vatican II. According to sources, I don't know how confirmed this is, someone else was getting close to getting the 2/3 votes needed to be Pope, and a bishop who was, the top cardinal from the Holy Roman Emperor got up and said basically the Holy Roman Emperor would not approve of this person, and so then they have to vote away from him. And Pius X had to become Pope rather than just being bishop, and he didn't like that. Well, I think that shows his humility, and so he made an excommunicable offense. But let's read 20A and B. A. Since the apostolic office of bishops was instituted by Christ the Lord and pursues a spiritual and supernatural purpose, this sacred ecumenical synod declares that the right of nominating and appointing bishops belongs properly, peculiarly, and per se exclusively to the competent ecclesiastical authority, which would be the Pope or the Patriarch in the case of Eastern churches. My side note there. B. Therefore, for the purpose of duly protecting the freedom of the church or promoting more conveniently and efficiently the welfare of the faithful, this Holy Council desires that, in future, no more rights or privileges of election, nomination, presentation, or designation for the office of bishop be granted to civil authorities. The civil authorities, on the other hand, whose favorable attitude towards the church the Sacred Synod gratefully acknowledges and highly appreciates, are kindly requested voluntarily to renounce the above-mentioned rights and privileges, which they presently enjoy by reason of a treaty or custom after discussing the matter with the Apostolic See. Right? So we've talked about that whole history. Vatican II is moving away from that history and saying, hey, no, the Pope names them, or in the case the Patriarch names them, right? And things like that. And this is asking for more freedom for the church, right? And it didn't have really the authority, because we made an agreement to force the other ones to do it, but most of the other European powers, especially the ones in the West, gave up this power. I'm not sure how much the East did, because I do remember in a biographical thing of John Paul II, there was some discussion of the bishops in Poland and the communist government, having some say in picking them. So I'm not sure what Poland did with that, anyways. But this idea, but a lot of them did, and they asked them to, and then it really happened. It's interesting how now in the 21st century, 50 years after this, in some sense there might be going back to certain things like this. There seems to be some element of this with the agreement with China. It's not really clear what that agreement is between the Vatican and China to try and reunite the the underground church and the above ground church in China. That's a whole other issue for the side note, but it's interesting how it seems like we might be going back to a little bit of that where secular authorities have at least some power over it, although the Vatican is freely to give or to take away that power, right? So let's continue with paragraph 21, which is on bishops resigning, right, when they're no longer to continue. Before Vatican II, the standard was bishops would just be bishops of their diocese until death, right? This doesn't mention the law of 75 years old, but I don't remember exactly when. But the standard now is 75 years old. The bishop has to submit his resignation. Now the resignation letter would be like, I'm officially submitting my resignation, but I really think I have the strength to go on for a few more years. And it only becomes effective if the Pope accepts that resignation, right, at 75, and things like that. But this is talking about when bishops should, renounce or retire, renounce their office, retire. So let's read it. Since the pastoral office of bishops is so important and weighty, diocesan bishops and others regarded in the law as their equals, who have become less capable of fulfilling their duties properly because of their increasing burden of age or some other serious reason, are earnestly requested to offer their resignation from office, either at their own initiative or upon the invitation of the competent authority. If the competent authority should accept the resignation, it will make provision for both the suitable support of those who have resigned and for the special rights to be accorded to them, right? So that's the idea. That gives us that idea, right, of the 75 years. It just says age here, but it was determined, like, for the law afterwards, it said 75. And there's different reasons bishops can no longer do it. Most often, the things that I've seen, if bishops in their late 60s, early 70s, are health issues, right? So, for example, the bishop of my home diocese recently passed away. May rest in peace, Bishop Fred Henry. He developed really bad back problems in his early 70s and had to retire early because he was having to spend, I forget how much time, but it was basically he had to spend more than half the day horizontal. And it's really hard to manage diocese if you're lying down 15 hours a day or whatever it is. I forget the exact number, right? And that's an issue, right? There are other reasons where, if certain scandal happens, or the bishop, case in Canada, there was a bishop who was about to be arrested because he was a very bad man. He sent his resignation in and it was accepted immediately. The bishop had gone a lot of times to a certain country known for things that men do with kids. Yeah. And he had a picture of that on his computer. Really bad. He was arrested. And the Vatican accepted his resignation immediately before, right, when he sent it, right? So, and the Pope does this usually for all the Roman Catholics. For other ones, I think it's the Patriarch. And they make provisions so that they're taken care of and things like that, right? So now I want to close. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time, monthly, or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next paragraphs of Christus Dominus, which is 22 to 24, and revising diocesan borders. There is a typo in the reading plan I just saw as I was going over this. 24 doesn't appear in the reading plan. It just says 22, 23. And then it goes straight to 25. 24 fits more with tomorrow than the day after, so we're going to read it tomorrow. If you want more information, such as playlists on individual documents or reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There's also a SQPN Discord with a channel for Vatican II in the Year at sqpn.com/Discord. Amen.